How can you bring more joy into your life? That is exactly what we're going to answer for you today. Plus, how to remove joy stealers and what is your soul salary. Today's guest is Jess Kaskov. She's a speaker, life coach, and best-selling author of the book Soul Salary: 4 Profoundly Impactful Steps to Aligning Your Time and Energy with What Feels Joyous and Fulfilling. She's also a mother of 2. I'm Anthony Franzese. This is the Successful Working Parents podcast, where we learn from busy working parents how they're able to balance it all and still thrive. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Successful Working Parents podcast, the podcast where we talk to successful working parents, title still pending. My guest today, she is the author of the #1 best-selling book, Soul Salary. She's a speaker and certified life coach at Joyfulness with Jess, mother of 2. Ladies and gentlemen, Jess Kaskov. Jess, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Anthony.
Yes, I'm excited to talk to you today. So usually we just kick off with a quick background on your career, if you could share that.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that I'm an author, speaker, life coach, and I was not always that. I spent 15 years in food manufacturing as an engineer. I'm at a Fortune 500 company. So my first career was very different than where I am right now. And I kind of had a pivotal moment where I switched from really that engineering career to this more people service based career. And it was many years ago, my company announced layoffs, the company I was working for. And they said, hey, in a few months, we'll let you know, which by the way, a few months is like way too much time to wait to find out if you have a job or not.
Sure.
But it did allow me to do some self discovery as I kind of waited. I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to have a job or not. So I did some reflections, and I said, like, what's been the biggest impact that I've had in my role so far? And I realized the 2 manufacturing plants that I'd worked at were now closed. So it was not that like process improvement or that equipment improvement that I put in place, even though I really enjoyed that. That was no longer here, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
truly just the impact I had on the people I managed and the people that I interacted with. So that was clue 1. It's been the people that has the impact. And then 2, I said, what was my favorite role? And it wasn't the department leadership, the process improvement leader. It truly was this one role I did that was human resources. So I did a cross-functional in human resources when our plant was closing. I was in charge of what they called climate and culture, which really was how to support people transitioning from working full time and the year and a half we needed before we closed the plant. I did make the layoff round. I did have a job, but you can't unsee what you've seen, right? And so I realized a lot of my passion lied in the people supporting and motivating others. So I began the dimmer switch off of engineering and the dimmer switch on into what I am today.
Awesome. And you have 2 kids, right? How old are your kids?
Yeah, they're 8 and 6. So 2 boys. They're rambunctious.
Yeah, I can bet. Well, talk me through that transition, because you have 2 kids. You're starting to say, "Hey, maybe there's something else I want to do with my life," which I think a lot of parents can definitely resonate with. So, how did you mentally build up the courage to make this switch into working for yourself and starting your own thing? And what are some of the kind of the practical steps you took?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because it was not just like a flip the switch type situation. I basically took leaps that I was comfortable enough taking, like very uncomfortable, but like not panic, right? So the first thing I did was pitch a part time arrangement with the company I was working for, which is not common. I was in 24/7 manufacturing, and so I didn't know if they would say yes, but if you don't ask, you're already at a no, right?
Very true.
So I asked and they said yes. And so I went to a part-time arrangement. And then, months later, I pitched a sabbatical. So my company every 7 years allows you a sabbatical. And I was double that and I'd never taken one. So unpaid, but I said, okay, I'd like to take a sabbatical. And that's where I began to write my book during the summer sabbatical. And went back for a short time, but decided ultimately to quit at that point. But you can see kind of the dimmer switch. And I forgot to mention, like when I went part time, I also did night school to become a certified life coach. So it was just like step by step and like big leaps, right? But they were not leaps enough that I was going to panic about them, but just under that.
Sure, sure. Are you busier now that you're working for yourself? I'm curious to hear like how your work-life balance has shifted from being a full-time employee to doing your own thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a interesting question, and I'll answer it in an interesting way, which is I don't like the term work life balance because I just feel like it's life. and you decide how you spend your time and energy. And so I don't know that work hours, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like, where are you putting your time and energy? And it's all part of life. So, work is not separate from life, it's part of life. And as far as hours go, though, to answer your question directly, I would say I put in slightly less hours working for myself than I did, because I was also on call 24/7 if an issue arose. So
Right.
there's that. Mm-hmm.
So how do you find the balance between, I guess, well, what would you call it if not balance, right? Because you do something for money, right? You have a business. I don't know if you don't
Yeah.
call it work, but then how do you like make time for your family? Like how are you balancing like how much effort to put into it and not just kind
Yeah.
of be, especially when you're starting something, right? You could have a lot of late nights and you could really put a lot of energy into it, and it can cause you to lose sight of or lose a grip on some other parts of your life. So how did you maintain those other parts of your life while still building this?
Yes. You can have everything you want, but not all at once.
Right. Well
So
said.
yeah, so it's really, for me, it's intentions. So I have very, very started doing very clear intentions for myself. And so I have, here are my life intentions, and then I break that into weeks and days. So an example is, I currently have a business goal that's my top business goal, which is I want to make another product, another coaching product to put out there. So my week goal during the week, an intention is, I need to block off X amount of time to do this creation. My day goal, the day that I blocked off time for creation, is to go into do not disturb, to work those exactly that many hours. So it's not necessarily a get this much done, it's work this many hours to make progress. So it's all based on intention. So I have had intentions in a day that is, today is a completely personal day. I am volunteering for my kids' art class. I'm taking them out early for a Parker mom date after we volunteer for art class. Like, I've made it intentionally a personal day, because work with yourself for yourself, like, you forget to take those personal days or those vacation days, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's it's making those intentions of how you're spending your life, right? And I do feel like my book, which I know we'll talk about, but I do feel like my book really helps focus on that. The subtitle is Four Profoundly Impactful Steps to Aligning Your Time and Energy with What Feels Joyous and Fulfilling. So that intention is also aligned with where you want to be for feeling the most joyous and fulfilled you can in the life you have right now.
So I did want to ask you about, even beyond the book, just the topic that you really specialize in, which is joyfulness. And how did you come to say, okay, I think this is what I want to focus on? A lot of people want to get into like health coaching, or they want to help people like make more money. And I think it was really interesting to hear that you found like this kind of area to focus on. So I'm curious how that came to be.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk slightly about the book, because you write the book you need, and I
Hmm.
did here.
Okay.
So so soul salary, is not the financial salary you earn. It's really the salary you pay yourself. Okay. And so what I base the book on is the concept of salary. So a paycheck is really what you identify. Your paycheck is what fills you up. Joy and fulfillment is what fills you up. Bills are what drains you. So that's joy killers and soul suckers is what I call them. And so really, I went through this book and I wrote my exercises and then did them as well. And that's how I started to realize, as I wrote this book, that paychecks really are around joy, and intention is really around fulfillment, right? And so those were kind of the tenets I was using to change my life. And so this is really a real time book of what I did, and I use my coaching experience and my coaching client experience also in the book. But as far as joy goes, I truly feel like our purpose here on earth is to be as joyous as possible. Like, why else are we here than to really do what makes us feel joyful? And often that aligns with a fulfilling purpose as well. And so
Yeah. So
that's where I came about that. And I do feel like I personally have found, immense joy, and I want to spread that. And spreading, when someone feels joyous and fulfilled, they elevate their vibration, which then changes their world, which changes their family, which changes their children. So when you're at that level of energetic vibration, I like to call it, you really are, you have a different energy about you that is contagious in a positive way.
how do you define joy?
I think it's personal. I truly do. Joy. It's that warm feeling. It's that a smile on your face. I call, glimmers. Have you heard of glimmers? It's the opposite of triggers.
Okay. Yep.
Triggers are what trigger you, and then glimmers are little moments of joy.
I like
And
that.
so it doesn't need to be, I feel joyous all the time. It's I have these glimmers that I point out and appreciate,
Yeah.
right? So it's those glimmer moments of, oh, I just feel like really really happy right now, or really really grateful, or it's those little glimmer moments is what I feel joy is.
Do you bring some of this into the way that you parent, or do you try to integrate some of this
Absolutely.
into the way you interact with your kids?
Absolutely. Yeah, we actually do. There's many ways we do it, but I love our dinner ritual, which we do high lows and yo-yos. And so it's what's your high of the day? What was your low of the day if you have one? You always have to have a high, but what was your low of the day if you had one? We can like talk through that. But the highs are really fun to hear because our youngest for a long time was like, he said like hugs every day was his high, which I will tell you
So
brings
cute.
him so much joy. And like
Sure.
you can find out what brings your kids joy by asking them what their highs are. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And then the lows, and then the yo-yos we made up, which is like you call out someone who like made your day better,
Okay,
right?
that's
And
nice.
so
Yeah.
it's like it's a fun way to also realize who helped give you a glimmer in the day.
Yeah.
So it's just a way to like to start practicing as 6 and 8 year olds looking for glimmers.
Yeah. I like that. I mean, I've heard of like doing like good, bad, and learned, but I like
Mhm.
that yours. I like that yours rhymes, and I think that the yo-yo is more fun for sure.
And my older son does a song every time. He's like, yo, 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 yo. It's so
That's
funny.
great.
So
That's
he's
so
like
funny.
made it into a fun little thing too.
What was it like? From their perspective, did they even have any thoughts on it when you transitioned from having this full time job that they probably saw you go to every day, and then, hey, mom's going to do something different now? Like, did you think about the way that they would see that, and how that might affect them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did. Had a lot of conversations around it. So I am really big on conversations with the kids and just being frank and honest. And I told them, what I wanted to do and why. And one of our family mottos is be loving and kind. Like that's how we focus on as we raise our children. And I said, mom wants to do that for adults too, to support them, to be in that kind of similar space, to be loving and kind to themselves, that will allow them to prioritize their joy. And I will tell you, my oldest tells everybody that I am an author. He's like, my mom has a book,
That's
so
cool.
he's really proud.
That's awesome.
And like for Christmas, they have this like little store at school that they get to like buy things for parents or whatever. And
Uh
my
huh.
son got me like a little heart that says love. He goes, because you spread so much love in the world. It was
Uh
just like one of those moments, too, where you're like, he sees what I'm doing in a different light, this whole new light of what I'm doing, and he gets it. And I don't know, I feel like he's proud if he's doing little things like that. So
I'm sure. Yeah, that's really amazing. I love to hear that kind of stuff. So that's nice. Yeah, because I think that um, whenever like it's good to set examples of like the relationship we have with work with our kids, and so I'm sure that it is meaningful for them to see that you are doing something that you like doing and light you up. I don't know how you felt about your previous job, but I think they probably see like a change in you at this point, and it probably inspires them to do something that they really find
I hope
fulfillment in as
so.
well.
I hope so. And I did like my previous job. I did. I was good at it. I'm engineering by degree, so I did like it enough to go get a degree in it, right? But I knew I would regret not trying what I feel like my heart is telling me to do. So there is more heart in it. There's more heart in it. And I will say, I read this really awesome line, which is that in books you can time travel. So this is another part that I love for like my kids. So what I mean by that is the book lasts long after you're gone, right?
Hmm.
So like my children's children can read what I've written and like my knowledge and what I want to share with the world. And so it really had like a heart-based intent, beyond spreading love and joy broadly to the world. I also really wanted to have a guide for my kids and their kids and their kids.
Yeah.
So there was like a personal intent as well.
Yeah, I like that. I've actually started to like jot down some things just so that there's some thoughts for my daughter, so that she can have them,
Um,
in case I don't get to say them all to her. She's only 6 months right now. Um, okay, so let's talk about the book. Soul Salary, 4 profoundly impactful steps to align your time and energy with what feels joyous and fulfilling.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about some of these impactful steps.
Yeah. So, first I wrote this for the overworked, overwhelmed, in or near burnout person who's likely not meeting their basic needs, much less their joy, right? So it's kind of, where I was at one point, and where that was the intent of the book is really, working parents was a huge audience that I was focused on. So, aligned with your audience here. But the concept of soul salary is the value your soul receives when your time and energy are in alignment with what feels joyous and fulfilling. So the 4 steps, the first thing is a pre-step, which is what is your soul salary right now? And I know I'll mention at the end, but I do have like a free quiz that don't even need to buy the book. You could just figure out what is your soul salary right now. Are you making minimum wage? Are you middle class? Are you a high earner? So just kind of tells you where you're at right now and under different subcategories and kind of tips. So like I start there in the book, and then I go to you need to demand minimum wage. It's the law. So before you can even start the 4 steps, you need to make sure you're giving yourself minimum wage. You're the CEO of your life. Are you meeting your basic needs? If you're not allowed to go into the 4 steps until you're meeting your basic needs. That's first. And I give some ways to get there. And then you get into the 4 steps. So the first one is identifying your paychecks. And this is what brings you joy and what it feels fulfilling. So what's your intention, your legacy in life that you're trying to leave? And those are your paychecks. That's what fills you up and brings in your salary, right? Step 2 is giving yourself raises and promotions in paychecks. So increasing your paychecks. So raises are, kind of those step-by-steps. Promotions are huge life changes that feel incredibly scary. So for example, a raise for me would be going to night school for certified life coaching. A promotion for me was quitting my job. I have this saying in the book, which is I increased my soul salary by decreasing my financial salary. And so that was a very scary promotion for me. I put promotion in quotes because it was a promotion in life and soul salary, but not in financial salary. So it's just interesting how each of these things can be counterintuitive to what we find as like a promotion would normally be. And then step 3 is identifying your bills, which is what drains you. Just like in salary now, you have bills that take away from your income. So bills are what I lovingly call joy killers and soul suckers. And joy killers are, kind of out of alignment expectations you have for yourself or others have on you that just are not true to who you are. One I think of is this notion of parent like you don't work and work like you don't parent. It's kind of this unspoken expectation in our culture that really is I don't want to work cannot interfere with personal life. You need to work, and it doesn't necessarily we don't want to hear really about personal life sometimes. And then opposite, like when you're parenting, it's like you're supposed to be really present, but like what if I get a work call? It's just this expectation that's unrealistic, right? And then soul suckers are kind of those limiting beliefs and fears that are keeping you from living a fulfilling life, right? And those joy killer expectations are keeping you from living a joyful life. So it's identifying what those are. And similar to like when I did some reflections in my old job, once you see those, you can't unsee them. People really have a hard time going to steps 3 and 4 because it's fun to identify your paychecks and give yourself raises and promotions. It's like fun to find out what's joyous. It is hard work to find out what is killing your joy and what is
Sure.
killing your fulfillment. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so I think it's so important to do because you can make a choice of, I know this and I'm going to continue with these big bills, or I'm going to start doing something about it. And that's what step 4 is about. It's about budgeting and budget cuts. So budgeting is similar to raises in the sense that it's manageable steps, where budget cuts is similar to promotions, where it's like things that very much scare you. Big things you're going to do to reduce your bills. And then eventually you do this cycle of going through these 4 steps until you feel like you've become a high earner in soul salary, which is when you feel, incredibly joyous and fulfilled. And I suggest just like at work, you do like a yearly review, an annual review for yourself. Where am I at now? And I do it more than yearly. I probably do it quarterly, and check in with myself and make adjustments. So
Awesome. Love
that's
that.
what it's about.
How long does it take to do to check in and do the quiz?
So the quiz is about 3 minutes.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, the what is your soul star is about 3 minutes. But obviously the book has exercises and is a book. So it's both. It's a workbook and book in one. So I will say like once you have done the quiz, they'll tell you what section to focus on. And I will
Gotcha.
say the exercises can be time consuming, but once you've done them once, it's a lot easier to just edit instead of redo them
Sure.
fully.
So the analogy obviously is there with like finance and salary, but I'm getting the sense that it's not like you might find that your job isn't really the issue, right? Like you maybe your job is part of your paychecks and things like
Right.
that, and that's not really what's taking away from your joy. So
And like, there's also things where you could do to add joy to your job, right? Like
right,
a raise in your job. Like I have a friend who is incredibly passionate about community service, and she found that there's a whole philanthropy committee in her work, and so she heads that up and decides where their grants go. And so that was incredibly fulfilling for her, and she can do it during work hours,
right, yeah,
right? So there's tons of that type of thing as well.
and maybe the bill is like some annoying family member or something, and not necessarily,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Hmm.
Though on the flip side, I imagine a lot of people go through this process and they say, "Actually, my job is really the
Right.
biggest bill here."
Right, and I would say, similar to, like, you have more control than you think, what I said earlier.
Uh-huh.
In jobs, you do have leverage, so it doesn't always have to be a black and white, like mine wasn't until it was, but it
Yeah,
doesn't have to be black and white. It could be there's always steps you can take in bills, like a budgeting step could be, I'd like to work for propose things. 'Cause like I said, you're already at a no if you haven't proposed something. Like, I'd like to work 12 hours for 4 days and take off the 5th day. Or there's just so many work arrangements that can be made. I have a friend who pitched that she has July off every year. It's a slow time for her role, and said, I don't want a reduction in pay, I want the July off, and they said yes.
well,
Like, I mean, it's not always going to
yeah,
be that way,
you never
right?
ask.
But
Yeah, you never know. Yeah,
and I've had people get a no, but also, hey, that project looks really cool. Next time there's a project like that, I'd really like to be on it. And you tell your manager why, and this is what I'm passionate about. I mean, there's just so many ways to work through bills and work.
yeah,
And I think a lot of times we don't even know what to ask for because we haven't done the work to know what feels joyous and fulfilling and what feels joy killing and soul sucking. Until we do that work, you don't know what to ask for, so you just stay stuck in a rut.
sure. From the people that you've worked with one on one, and maybe people that have read the book and reached out to you, have you noticed any trends? Like, what are like some of the biggest paychecks and some of the biggest bills that people typically have?
No, I've not noticed trends
Wow.
because it's so deeply personal.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I mean, there's obviously like big categories like where you live, relationships and family. So maybe you want to adopt, maybe you want to get a dog, maybe you want to, I've had people contemplate divorce. I mean, there's all things, relationships. There's where you live. There's what you do for work or where you work. There's experiences like I want to travel more, or I want to try out sewing quilts. So
Sure.
it's just so funny because, yeah, of course there's those broad categories that we all know, but it's just so interesting the things that people come up with that I'm like, that certainly doesn't make me feel joyous. I'm so glad that makes you feel joyous.
Right. Yeah.
Because we need everyone to be different and like different things for us to really function as a society.
Yeah. Absolutely. That makes sense. So then, and then, is there guidance on how to essentially just get more of that thing into your life and less of the things out of your life? That's essentially step four, right?
Yeah, step 2 and 4. So step 2 is how do I add more joy and fulfilling things into my life, and step 2 is that. Step 4 is how do I remove things that are not. And so there's definitely step-by-step guidance on how to move forward with that. So an example, I'll give you just one of the exercises. So joy killers are expectations. So one thing I have you do is write out all the expectations you could think of. Like, it doesn't have to be all of them, but here's all the expectations I have of myself. Here's expectations others have of me. My job requires me to be on call 24/7. My job needs me to be there 10 hours a day. Like all these expectations. And then you read through the list and you cross out ones that don't feel authentic to you. And what I mean by that is if it's an I should or I have to, can you change it into I want to or I desire to? If it's not an I want to or I desire to, cross it out. I'm not saying you need to eliminate it. It's just the first step of realizing what you might want to ask for and start striving towards, right? It's not feeling like an I want to, I desire to. Interesting. So that's against joy, because what I want to and I desire to is joyous. So just it's like the one step to start getting there, and then you work on, actually making steps of how to
Yeah.
move forward. But it's the realization of what could I start eliminating, right?
Right.
As an
So for
example of
instance,
exercise.
yeah. So for instance, like I mentioned, our daughter's like 6 months old, and so as a first time parent, I'm putting some undue pressure on myself to really crush it as dad, husband, and employee, and kind of just show up as an A plus in everything. And so I think asking myself, do I feel like I should be doing those things, or do I desire to be those things?
Right. And that is so common in like badass professionals, which I'm sure you are, is
Thank you.
wanting to be everything and to everyone.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, this is going to be some hard love. If you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. So if you try to be A plus in everything, shit's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like eventually your body, your mind, your emotions are going to be forced you to shut down. And to anybody, like I have personal experience in this. I had I'll give an example. When I was pregnant with my son, I was still working crazy hours and really active in my work. And I started to get, Braxton Hicks contractions are kind of those practice contractions that are not really contractions,
Yeah.
but they feel the same.
Yep.
I started getting those in the second trimester. And I was like, I'm just going to push through, and I went to my OB appointment. She's like, wait, what? You're having these? And I was so embarrassed because I was just like, yeah, you just push through. That's kind of what I've always done. Don't listen to your body. Like you just push
Right.
through.
Yeah.
A plus, you got to be an A plus, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I totally strove for that too. I'm totally with you, Anthony. But it was one of those moments where I completely realized that I was not in tune with my needs. And I was really not doing an A plus work on like taking care of myself. And it took having a human growing inside me to realize like, oh, it's about taking care of me, and which in turn take care of my son that I'm growing. And it was just one of those embarrassing aha moments because it seemed so obvious, but it was a big lesson to me. And I think I don't want you to have to end up there, right? I don't want anyone to have to end up there. Don't, I hope no one has to get to that point of your body telling you to slow down. But it's just interesting, again, like you doing those A pluses and all of them, is that societal pressure, in my opinion, to parent like you don't work and work like you don't parent.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. So what do you suggest for self care and time for yourself? Again,
Mhm.
you have a business, you have kids, you have a husband. So how do you balance all that?
Well,
And try-
the demand minimum wage chapter I talked about,
Mhm.
one of the exercises that I still do, and I think a lot of people would really benefit from, is pausing and checking in with your body, mind, and emotions. So this helps build self trust that you are pausing to listen to yourself and then taking an action towards it. So first, mind, body, emotion. So let's say body. My body feels very physically tired. My mind, let's say, feels very scattered, and I'm going 100 miles per hour in my hour. Let's say my emotions feel sad, like I feel like I need to cry. Then I say,
Mhm.
okay, what's one thing you could do for each of those? Okay, I can take a nap during my lunch break, or I'm going to go to bed early tonight because my body feels exhausted.
Right.
Two, my mental state is very all over the place. Maybe I'm just going to take 2 minutes in silence and just stare into space, or I'm going to do a meditation if that's your thing. Three, I have emotional sadness, right? So when I get home, I'm going to watch a sad movie. Like when the kids are in bed, I'm going to watch or the saddest parts of a movie that I know and love so that I can have a really good cry because I'm going to need some crying. My emotions need it. I'd rather do it at home to a sappy movie than in the middle of a meeting when it catches up to me,
Yeah.
right? So, and then I say, just do one of those. Like you've now ideated three things, great, but do one.
What's the
And
best?
then,
What's the best movie scene to cry to?
oh my God, A Walk to Remember.
Oh
So
man.
sad.
Yeah.
Do you know that
That's
one?
a classic. That's old. That's old. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's just it's like a shock too when you find out the
Right.
person
Right. Right.
your secret. Anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
that's one that's my go-to.
Okay. All right. If anyone home needs a good cry, that's the best bet. All right, we're gonna move into the final segment called Jess's Advice Corner. So I'm gonna just ask you for some advice on a few topics. You ready?
Okay. Yep.
First question is, what advice would you have for somebody that wants to write a book that they feel like they've always been meaning to share with the world?
Start with your intention. Why are you doing it? So mine started with it's on my bucket list. Okay, that was my original intention. Kind of weak. to like motivate you, right? Like, oh, it's on my
Sure.
bucket list. So
Yeah.
I dove in deeper. Okay, well, like I said, I want to time travel, right, for my kids. Okay, I dove in deeper. I feel like I've found love and joy for myself and fulfillment. I want to spread that. Okay, dive deeper. I want to make a profound impact on the world. And when I spread love and joy, it elevates people, like I talked about. So like that felt so purpose driven and motivational that I was able to do it. You need to have an intent that you feel strongly about, that will get you through the book writing, editing, publishing process, because it is tedious. Like, I'm not going to lie about it. It takes a long time. It is tedious. It can be expensive if you're getting professional editors, etc. Like, you really need to have why you're doing it and feel really solid in that.
Yeah. By the way, did you self-publish or you found someone to pick it
I
up?
self-published.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm sure that was a lot of extra work as well.
Yeah. And learning, because I've never done it before, right? I had to learn
Yeah.
how to do it. So
Yeah. Um, what advice do you have for somebody who's about to be a parent but still has a career they want to focus on?
yeah. Make sure that you're not trying to do it all and ask for help. I feel like that was one of the things that I really struggle with is I felt like asking for help was like, oh, I can't do it all, like admitting that I can't do it all myself
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
kind of a failure. Um, so asking for help and not just, I feel like there's so much help in the first like 2 months, 3 months, and then it just plummets. Right?
Yeah.
And so, like,
Yes.
for me, my hardest mental health time was when my kid was your kid's age. 3 to 9 months was so hard because the support drops off for the most part, and I didn't ask for help,
Yeah.
right? And so you're like, oh, this is life now. Like they don't just start sleeping through the night. This is life now, and it catches up. You can do 3 months on adrenaline.
Sure. Yeah.
6 months you can. And
Yeah.
so asking for help and getting help is essential. And that's the time as new parents to really use your resources to support you. If it means you have someone babysit 2 nights a week for 1 month because it's just a hard mental health month for you, that's when you use your resources. If you have it, if you have the savings, that's the type of time to use it. So don't be frugal during that point. Use your resources, whether it's your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, your sister, or financial resources like care.com. Like
Yeah.
it's the time to use it. And I know you took a long paternity leave. Your wife took a good maternity leave. Like there's also pieces of that. If that's unpaid, that's hard to make that decision. I know mine was unpaid. I only got partial of my pay for disability for the disability period. And so it was a hard decision. But that's also the time to use your resources, right? That was a discussion my husband and I had. Yes, we're foregoing income. However, this is the time that we have savings for.
Right.
Becoming a new parent is what you have the savings for to support yourself and make the transition as loving on yourself as possible, because you're already trying to be as loving and, as you said, an A+ parent, and you can't be if you're not being A+ to yourself.
Yeah. It's so true though. Those first 3 months, you're just sort of like going on fumes, and then and they're not even like acknowledging you or really smiling at you, and you're just like the fact that you made a child and you think it's cute is like all you have to hold on to, and then they start to interact with you a little bit more, and then you start to like have more of a momentum there. But it does get hard after that because then reality kind of sets in.
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to your former self?
Um, be yourself. I know that's like so cliche, but I'm gonna put a different spin on it.
Okay.
I'm gonna say be weird. And so this is something my fourth grade teacher said. She said I was getting made fun of. So like, you're weird. And my fourth grade teacher interjected and goes, weird is a compliment. Who wants to be normal?
Yeah.
And so I use that in life so much. Like weird is a compliment. I'm a weirdo. I like went from engineering to writing a self-help book. Like, come on. People are probably like, what can you even like talk to people? You're an engineer.
Right. Yeah.
But be your unique self and remember that weird is a compliment. That's actually the acknowledgement in my book. I go to Riley and Parker, my two kiddos, make sure that you chase your joy and that you be weird. And,
Yeah.
it's something we do in our family. We'll call each other weird and be like, thank you. you know
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, honey, if you're listening, it's okay that I'm weird because let my wife know. What advice would you give to your former self?
I think that was the one you just said, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, what's the best advice you ever received?
Best advice I've ever received. Hmm. I mean, the weirdest compliment's a good one, but uh, it is not. It is not weak to know what you need and to ask for it. I know I said to ask for help already, but I think it's like no, like acknowledging that you have needs. I think is really what it is,
Yeah.
because it's not just the asking for help. It's like you need to acknowledge that you have needs that are not being met, which is not something. If you're a high performer that you really focus on, it's like I don't have needs. I'm gonna do awesome at everything. Like we're just gonna go go go.
Yeah.
But it's acknowledging that you have needs. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Last question. As I mentioned, I have a 6-month-old daughter. So, what advice do you have for me as the father of a 6-month-old girl?
I think the one that I said earlier, which is if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness.
Mm,
So really, really prioritize self um, and your kid. So like they say, oh, be a really great father, but don't forget to work on yourself. Well, I say and, not but.
yeah.
Be a great father, and to be a great father, I need to take care of myself. It's an and. You take
Yeah.
care of her and you.
Yeah. That's great. Appreciate that. Well, Jess, this has been a great conversation. Where can people go to connect with you? Anything you'd like to promote, or where can people go to learn more about you?
Absolutely. So if you want to kind of understand what your soul salary is now, and what your subcategories are you having soul salary, are you a high earner in joy, or are you minimum wage? Does joy, fulfillment, and basic needs? It kind of does subcategories. But before you buy the book, I would say do this quiz. It's at www.jesskaskov, KASKOV as in Victor.com/soul salary. Free quiz, 3 minutes. It'll give you really quick tips and feedback for yourself, and just trying to spread that love and joy. So start there, and if you feel compelled, check out the book. It's on Amazon.
Awesome. Appreciate that. I'll link to all that in the show notes as well. Jess Kaskov, everybody. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you.